one of the most important things is self-belief, and you can't teach that. That's character. So self-belief is so important. I've played with people who have been astonishing musicians, but were forever doomed to be playing in their bedroom because they had no self-belief, because they did not go out there and put themselves out there and perform, so that people noticed them. You know, I mean, it's like if you're the greatest guitar player in the world and you sit in the middle of a tent in the Sahara Desert, you are never going to make it. It's like the universe is not fair like that, because you'll need it, because you'll get knocked over, knocked down, and other musicians will try and put you down as well, because you know they're all trying to step on top of you to do X, Y, Z, and try not to just go down the rabbit hole of a particular type of music, even if you love that particular type of music. Here's an irony. Yes, you need the self-belief, but if you make the performance all about yourself, people will walk away, because nobody's that interesting. Nobody's that interesting, right? What you need to do is have the self-belief to use whatever talent it is you have to tell a story, to say something, to have some feeling inside that you can express that's real and authentic, and then people will listen because it resonates with them. So yes, you need the self-belief, but we don't need to hear all about you. It's like a game of tennis. I mean, when you're performing live, it is like a game of emotional tennis, because you knock it out there and they knock it back and you go, hey, let's recirculate that, boom, and then you chuck it out again and you gradually warm up the pot. You know, that's why concerts are always better at the end than they are at the beginning. I mean, whatever the last thing I did, that's what keeps me going. Not the thing I did 40 years ago or anything else like that. Oh, that's great, you know, but I did that 40 years ago. So, and occasionally, I don't listen to a lot of stuff that I did. And when I do, I hope I'm sometimes pleasantly surprised, and sometimes I'm mildly appalled. And, you know, so I go, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. Oh, wow, what were we thinking, you know? Or I hear some technical thing like, oh my God, that note's just a little bit dodgy. How do we let that go? You know, so stuff like that. You become hypercritical, and I try and avoid it, because what you want is it's an instant reaction people get to music. It's you know, and if you then try and pick it apart, then you kind of destroy the moment. You know, there are moments of technical excellence that coincide with emotional impact, and when you do that, you're like, hey, you know, we were 10 today. But sometimes you don't. Sometimes you get an emotional 9.5 and a technical 5. You know what I mean? But what's more important? You know, I mean, for the audience, I argue it's always the emotional 9.5. You know, except for obviously there's the geeks on YouTube that go, you know, I don't like him because he can't sing a high D above C. Oh, fuck off. You know what I mean? My son, Austin, who was in Rise to Remain and As Lions and stuff, he was working with Philip to write some songs, and he played me some stuff. And I went, wow, who's this guitar player? He's really cool. I mean, I love his little melodies and stuff. It's beautiful. And he said, oh, it's a Swedish guy. So we were in the pub and we were having a few beers, and I thought, well, he's a nice guy. And he said, you know what, why don't you ask Philip to come down? So Philip came down to play through a few tunes. He was playing with a band in Texas, so he said, oh, I'll stop by LA. And at the same time, I was talking to Roy, and we were talking about the solos on Rain on the Graves. And Roy said to me, he said, oh, I actually didn't do that solo. I said, what do you mean you didn't do the solo? He said, no, it's this kid, Chris de Klerk. I went, okay, this is news. Well, why don't we ask Chris to come down and have a go as well? So they both turned up, and they were both note perfect, and we had a bit of a jam and everything else, and it worked out that in the end I took both of them. So out we went as a crew, and we suddenly realised that, guys, we've got a band here, man, and we loved it. We had an absolute blast on tour. We were so sad when we came to the end of the European one, because we could have gone on for another 3 months. I always look for, in all musicians, I always look for people who understand the song, understand the requirements of the song, and do things that serve what the song is trying to do. And it's sometimes tricky to find, because you find loads of guys that are technically very good, very proficient, but they can't turn it off. They can't turn off being technical. You should just be emotional. And they're like, oh, how do you do that? Hang on, what scale is that? I said, no, it's not a scale. It's the reason you learn scales is so you can forget them. It's like the reason I learned vocal technique, which I kind of self-taught, but I realised at one point that there was a couple of tunes that early on in my career with Samson, that we did something in the studio and I couldn't reproduce it live, and I was just tearing my hair out. I was like, what have I done? Oh my God, blah, blah, blah. I've already loved this record and I can't do it live. I lose my voice. I went, go lie down in the darkened room for a minute, calm down. What do you think all this vocal technique is for? It's so you can reproduce what you did in the studio. So learn, using what you know, how to make that work. And I went, oh, okay. And that kind of unloaded a lot of pressure off me. So what I mean by forgetting about scales is not forget them, but don't let them dominate. Don't let them dominate. You let your heart rule your head when you're playing. So I look for players who do that and who understand that. I find bass players fairly easy to work with, because bass players understand the song structure straight away. They are the root of everything. It's rare to find a really awful bass player. But at the same time, when you find a really good one, they're outstanding. But generally, they're kind of all pretty decent. Drummers, again, it can be tricky, because I'm a frustrated drummer. I started off wanting to play drums, so I have enough understanding to be dangerous. And for me, drummers that understand the song are a rarity, and when you find them, they're like gold nuggets. And Dave is a drummer who understands the song. He'll just turn around and go, you know what, maybe we should just slow that down by like 1 BPM. And I'm like, that'll work. Bing! And everything suddenly comes to life. There's enough room to breathe, without great long gaps. And often, I've worked with drummers who have no idea that they're actually playing a song. They're playing a drum part, and all they know is that bit. They say, well, the chorus. It goes, what bit's that then? Oh, that's a bit that goes diddly 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 bum diddly bum. Yeah, that's the chorus. Oh, right, that's the chorus. Yeah. Could you? And you kind of, and then you sort of like call for help from the bass player, because it's like, you speak drums, don't you? You talk to him about this, that, and the other. But you get together and you're a crew. That's my attitude anyway. I'm although it's theoretical, it's a solo band and everything. I really like being in a band. So when I assemble a band, I treat it all. I'm the singer in the band. I know there's always a little bit of like, you're the boss, but I prefer to keep the boss bit very low in the order of priorities. Philip said when he found out I was doing this, he said, that's like my alma mater. He said, go back and tell them, they did great, so they speak really highly of this place. obviously when the whole file sharing thing kicked off in the very early days, the major labels didn't understand what was about to hit them, so they all went bust. People who loved listening to music, I was like, hey, cool, all of our favourite music is suddenly free, which is very nice for them. It was not a great disaster for established bands with a live following, because they could still sell enough product, physical product, to make it worthwhile doing a record, but they could still go out and tour and make their money and make a living and merchandising, so on and so forth. So yeah, great. But for everybody else on the planet that was up and coming, struggling to work, then Spotify's a catastrophe, or what is file sharing morphed into the corporate, so you have to be use your creative imagination in trying to present what you're doing in a way that people are excited about it. That's always been the case, but it's just the media in which you have to do it is now different. Now it's online, it's Instagram, it's, and I know there are people who sit in their den with their podcast mic on and do basically kind of like a live broadcast every week with subscribers, and that's the way they make music and do it. But it's not the same as going out there with a live concert and building a physical community in one place that does that space. But it may be a way to alleviate some of the problems associated with kind of digital distribution. The good thing is that record labels, or the record labels that have evolved from the ashes of the old system, are all very tech savvy and realize that you can stop people giving your music away. You can still sell records and things like that, and that there are, other avenues, that there is an endless appetite for consumption of music. So somebody somewhere must be making some money out of it.
Considering the operatic and theatrical elements you've brought to heavy metal vocals, if you were tasked with composing a short operetta based on one of Iron Maiden's epics, what specific vocal techniques or character interpretations would you explore beyond what you've already done in the original song?
Okay. So basically it's saying, how would I sing my old shit differently? Well, I to be honest with you, if it was done with in a symphony, you wouldn't be changing the melody. So I don't see any reason at all why you would take a different storytelling approach. It's kind of a stupid question, which is AI.
Yes.
It's artificial intelligence.
Yes.
Why does artificial intelligence make you sound so stupid?
And here's why AI thought it was a fresh angle. It actually gives you an explanation why it thinks it's a good question, which is, your answer is so much better. It says, specific focus on operetta. While his operatic influences are noted, directly ask him to envision a formal operetta based on Maiden's work, pushes him into a different creative space. And then it says, emphasis on vocal technique beyond existing work. This encourages him to think beyond his established performance and considers new approaches within the operatic framework.
If I wrote when I was an undergraduate, if I wrote something like that in a history essay, there'd just be a big red line through it, and the teacher would have written bullshit.
Yeah.